Welcome back to What My Dad Does, and today I'm building a stud wall across here. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. So the first thing to say is that unfortunately the camera is quite close to where my wall's going to be. So I did realise that unless I have a huge room and I can get the camera a long way away, you're never going to be able to see the whole wall. So I'm going to end up moving the camera around a bit, so I apologise for that, but it will still give you all the information you need to build your own, hopefully. So first things first, I'm doing a 4x2 stud wall out of timber. You can do it out of 3x2 if you really want to, or you could do metal studs. But this is 4x2, which is a fairly traditional way of doing it. The first thing you need to do is put your base plate on the floor. That will go end to end of your wall, and then coming off of that, we're going to do an upright either end, or a stud either end. But firstly, a word of warning, don't start screwing or nail gunning straight away through this base plate, because there are going to be pipes, electric cables, other cables in that floor, and you are 100% going to hit one. No matter how random it is, it's going to happen. So what I tend to do is I just tend to use 60mm screw, because I know that my finished timber is 45mm. I know my chipboard's 22mm, so I know a 60mm screw isn't going to go all the way through, and I'm fairly safe. But you do need to put some fixings in the base plate, unless it's exceedingly short. But otherwise, you do need to put some fixings in that middle bit. I did have a chippy do one for me once, and he didn't, and you could literally walk up to the wall, put your foot on it, and push the wall in at the middle. So that's the first thing to do. Let's get that done, and then we'll look at putting our uprights in. Okay, so there's my base plate. I've got one screw every 600, and I've done that screw in the centre. I don't bother going either side, because I'm going to have upright studs on here, which is going to stop that timber bowing anyway. Really, this is just to keep this timber in place and keep the wall in place, essentially. So the next thing to do now is to measure off of this plate up to the ceiling. I want it fairly tight, not too tight that I'm smashing it in there, but tight enough that it's a decent measure. And then we're going to look at fixing it into this wall. Okay, so here's my first stud, which is going to go against this wall here, and it's cut so it sits on top of that plate and goes up to the ceiling. Now, it's very important here, obviously, that you make sure this is vertical. Okay, whether you're getting a vertical line with a laser or a level or a plumb bob, whatever it is, just make sure it's level, because you cannot have your wall leaning one way or the other. And simply, the way I'm going to fix this is I'm going to screw it into this wall. I'm just literally going to go right the way through from here, right the way through into the wall for 4 inches, and I'm then going to get a plug and a screw, hammer it through the wall until it stops, and then screw it the final bit of the way so it holds it there. This timber is actually going to be fixed into the base plate eventually, and it's also going to be fixed into the head plate eventually. So technically it can't go anywhere anyway, it's pin top and bottom, but I still like to put a few screws in it just to make sure that the wall end to end is completely stable. So let's go through and screw these and get this bit fixed, and I'll do the same with the other side, and then we'll come back and we'll look at the head. Okay, so we now have a solid base plate. I'm going to have a solid upright on either end. So the next thing to do is to join the two tops up. The problem I've got here is, I don't know if you can see this, but imagine the trusses upstairs are like that. My head plate is somewhere in here, in a void. So I've got nothing to screw up into apart from a little bit of plasterboard. So you've got two options here. If you can, and it's safe, I go up into the loft and I put a couple of noggins just across. Don't know how many you need, every 600, so maybe you need 4 or 5, I don't know. Fix those into the trusses, and then coming up under this, you can screw up into those timbers you've put across. I can't do that because above this is a loft room. So I can't actually get into that void. So as this is a single piece of timber, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put some grab adhesive on the top of my headrail, and I'm then going to screw it in as well into some plasterboard fixings into that plasterboard. It is also fixed either end, and this is only 2 meters wide, this stud wall. So, you know, that's going to hold, that's going to be fine. But if it was longer than that, certainly if it was longer than, say, a single piece of timber, like over 3 meters or something, I would probably advocate cutting holes in that and doing some noggins or something. You know, you really need that head fixed into something properly. So I'm going to get on with that, and this needs to be an accurate measure, okay? Again, you don't want it loose. You want to have to tap it into place. When I mean tap, I'm not talking about a club hammer and really giving it a whack. I'm talking about just your hammer, just to tap it into place. So it needs to be an accurate measure. If it's loose, it's no good. These timbers are going to shrink over the next couple of years anyway. So if you cut it loose now, in 2 years' time, it's going to be floating around in midair. So you definitely want it, I say, not too tight, but you definitely want it, so you need to just use a hammer just to tap it into place. And then what we're going to do with that headpiece is we're going to pin it onto this timber here, either end, and I'm going to do 2 fixings, 2 like that, and 2 going the other way. The reason we do that is it just keeps it more solid, stops it from twisting. No, it shouldn't twist anyway because it has got the uprights. And then I'm going to fix this upright into the base plate using the same thing. 2 nails going down on both bits. I'll use my nail gun for that. You can use nails, you can screw it. Doesn't really matter what you use, I guess. I suppose screws are the best. Maybe ring shanks are good. I use 4-inch nails from a nail gun, but anything like that is fine. Okay, so I've cut the head, and let's just see how this fits. So yeah, that's perfect. And that's what we want. So it'll stay there by itself. It wasn't, I know I wasn't smashing it to get it up there, but it's tight enough. That's great, that's really good. So what I'm going to do now, same thing, I'm going to drill up, then I can put my plasterboard plugs in, put some adhesive on this, stick it, screw it, and that's there. And then I'll pin with 2 nails going across this way, so these 2 are joined, and then do the same at the bottom, same the other side. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now. We've got our base plate, we've got our uprights on either end, and we've got our top plate, all fixed, all secure, all done. So now we need to infill. So I guess the first thing to say about these is you need to think about your plasterboard. So when you're measuring for these studs, you need to measure off this wall, not off this timber, but off the wall, and you're going to measure 4, 8, 12. A sheet of plasterboard is 1200. And your sheet of plasterboard needs to finish down the middle of your 1200 stud. Down the middle, because obviously the next sheet of plasterboard is going to sit on the other half of that stud, okay? You've only got 45 millimeters there to play with, so that 1200 stud needs to be accurate. The other 2, not so much. The 1200 one needs to be where it needs to be. It is a pain if you come to do your plasterboard sheets and you've measured it wrong or done it wrong, and it doesn't fit and you need to cut some off, or you need to cut this right back to your 800 stud before you do your next one. So make sure that is in the correct place. Second thing to say is you need to measure this accurately, top to bottom. Again, you want it tight. When I say tight, not smashing it into place, but tight enough so you need a hammer just to tap it into place. You don't want it loose if possible, because it's going to shrink anyway, and in a couple of years' time, it's just going to be full of holes. So make sure your cuts are good and accurate. Thirdly, you also want to make sure your timbers are square. They're square to the base plate and the top plate, because the thing we're going to do at the end is we're going to put noggins between. And These are cut square. You need them to be square to each other so you get a nice tight fit so they don't twist. Okay, so when you're doing them, I use a set square and just mark them square and then nail them square onto the plate. So fourthly, once we've cut them and they're in place, we're going to nail them 2 nails at the top, 2 nails at the bottom, okay, for each one. And then they're going to be additionally held in place by these noggins we're going to do afterwards. And I guess the last thing is as well, how do you know that these are vertical? You can't measure off of these because these may not be vertical, depends on the old wall you're going to. So I always use a laser level. I mark it along the bottom, then I just use a laser level to go from bottom to top so I know it's level. If you haven't got a laser level, you're going to need to put a level on your timber, on your stud, knock it into place until it's level, and then nail it through, and then just check that, okay? Because otherwise when you do your plasterboard, if your 1200 stud is not level, it's going to be hanging over the bottom, not long enough at the top, and it's a real pain to sort that out. So I'm going to mark this up, and then going to start cutting. Final tip as well, don't just measure this one and cut this one and assume that is going to be the same all the way along, because chances are it's not going to be. It's amazing sometimes how out height-wise a ceiling can be or a floor can be. So you're going to need to measure each one individually. Otherwise, by the time you get down there, it's either going to be too long or it's going to be falling through the gap. So check each one as you go. Okay, let's get that done. Okay, so that's our studs done and in. I feel a little bit like I'm in prison here at the moment, but essentially that's the stage we want to get to now. And last but least, we now have noggins to put in, okay? So bits of timber between these to take out the flex, okay? However, you also need to be thinking about what it is you're trying to achieve in your room. So this is a bathroom. You could, for example, be fitting a towel rad on this wall, okay? And then you're going to need somewhere to screw into because you can't fix it to the plasterboard. They're heavy, it's just going to fall away. So you need to be thinking about where else you need your noggins, okay? You might be fixing a basin to this wall and a unit maybe off the floor or something. So you need to think, what have I got going on here? And sometimes if you're not 100% sure where it's going to go, I have in the past put a bit of tile batten and then recessed in to the whole, void, a bit of plywood. Okay, just so I can fix it anywhere I like when it comes to it. But you need noggins in place for certain things. I haven't actually got any of this. This is just a blank wall for me. So I'm just going to do one noggin through the middle. The thing with this noggin is I'm going to do this through the middle because this is a 2.4 high ceiling here, which is fairly standard. But if I was doing something higher than that, 2.8 meters say, I would split that into thirds. So I do 2 noggins, one up here, one down here. Okay, just to take that bounce out. So I'm going to go ahead and do my noggins. Again, measure 1, okay, and then your next one and your next one. Because if this one's slightly big, but when you put it in, it's going to bend this stud slightly. This is going to be smaller. So don't try and be clever and measure each one and cut each one. Because otherwise by the time you get there, you're going to have a real bow and they're all going to push each other that way. Okay, so do one, put it in, do one, put it in, do one, put it in. If you've got a chop saw, use a chop saw, fantastic, square edges, much quicker and better. It's a bit awkward where I'm working, so I'm using a hand saw, but yeah, just make sure they're nice and square cuts. And again, 2 nails, or in fact, I'll probably do 2 nails, then I like to come in this way. Then on this one, 2 nails, and then in this way, etc., etc. Okay, and again, as I say, I'll put that in the middle. I'll split the length out just to take that bounce out. Okay, so let's get that done. And so that's it, we're finished. Noggins are in place. If you remember that bounce we had before without the noggin, there's now no bounce in that at all. Either way, that is now a really nice, solid wall. So my next stage is to plasterboard this, and then I'll be skimming it. One thing I should say, when I do the other side, I will be filling this void with insulation, okay, for noise reasons. It just deadens the noise a little bit. So you definitely want to be doing that. And then that's about it. So yeah, I hope that's given you all the tips you need. And thanks for watching, and I look forward to catching you on the next one.